Probably get started if that's okay. I'd like to welcome you. I'm Jason Davis, the president of the Pre-Med Club, AMSA. I'd like to thank all of you guys for coming. This is our, for as far as I know, our second official year of doing this consistently. There might be more. We're trying to make this be a tradition. And anyway, this is the meeting to kind of help us who want to be physicians to kind of prepare for life in medicine, because we know it's not just the future physician that's going through the entire experience, it's the family as well. And so this meeting is to kind of help us to prepare for that with our families as well, our spouses and significant others. So we'll just pass the time over to our presenters. We're really excited for them, really grateful for their time, because I know they're busy, probably as busy as their spouses are. But for them to take the time to be here, we're really grateful for that. And the way we'll do it after they present themselves, just kind of raise your hand and maybe, I'm trying to think who should point the finger and call on him. Jason. Maybe I will if it comes down to it, or if it just kind of goes along, then we'll do it like that. And you can either direct your questions specifically, to someone if you want to apply to, because everyone's been in different residencies and different experiences, or you could ask a general question for all of them to answer, whatever you guys like. So, yeah, we'll just go from there. So maybe just go from that way to that way. Thanks.
I'm Lisa Sheffield, and my husband is a neonatologist. We've been here in Ogden for about 10 years. And to start out, I met him in undergrad at BYU, and he was a business major entrepreneur with a thought to be a professor. And after we got married, then he decided he wanted to do some medical school. So we took a year and a half to do some research and study for the MCAT and do all that. And we did have a child in undergrad. And we actually have 5 children, and we had one in each kind of adventure in our life. So then we went, he did not match the first time in what he wanted to do, so he chose something else, and he chose pediatrics. And it was really hard to choose a residency because he liked everything he did. But he was really excited to go into pediatrics, and we matched in Kansas City, our first choice, Kansas City. He worked in Kansas City, Missouri, at a really big children's hospital there, and we lived in Kansas City, Kansas. And we did 3 years there, and he decided then he did not want to do diaper rash the rest of his life, and have people tell him, I have no problems filling Diet Coke in the bottle. So he kind of was looking for something that was a little bit more where he could be an expert in the field, and he really liked neonatology, which is premature babies. So we decided to do a fellowship, and we interviewed and all that, and then he did match, and it was good for us to stay right where we were. So we stayed there for 6 years for our residence, our fellowship there. Like I said, we had a child in undergrad, in medical school, in residency and fellowship. And then we had an opportunity to look for a job, and we wanted just somewhere close to where we both grew up in Salt Lake. So we hoped to be 12 hours from Salt Lake, and we were excited about a job in Boise. And then it didn't work out. A guy called and asked if we wanted to just come see Ogden, McKV, and he loved it. And so here we are. We are at McKV, and like I said, he's been practicing there about 10 years. I graduated in graphic design, which is very far from the field of science. I did medical anatomy. I illustrated medical books to get money, and I did provide for us, and I ran a business to provide our means of income through residency.
My name's Carrie Sharp. Daniel and I met at Utah State for undergrad, so we're both Aggies. Sorry, guys. And he got into medical school at DU, so we did med school in Salt Lake, and now he's a family practice resident at McKV here in Ogden. So we've stayed really close. It's been awesome. We have 2 little girls. We had our first daughter in med school, and then our second little girl was born first year in residency. I worked for a couple of years at an elementary school while he's doing med school, and then I just stayed home with the girls, and that's worked out great for us. I don't have as much to say as you do. I'm old. That's it. That's all we've done.
My name is Brittany Martindale. My husband is Brett. And we have actually known each other since we were teenagers, but we both went to BYU for undergrad. And I graduated 1 year before him, so with a degree in elementary education, so I started teaching first grade while my husband finished up school. And then we went to Ohio State for medical school, and where I taught for 1 more year. And our first child, our son, was born during our second year of med school. And then we matched here at McKay for family medicine residency. So he's an intern right now in his first year. And then our daughter was born right at the very beginning of residency.
Sounds good.
My name is Katie Flanagan, and my husband Daniel is a third-year resident at McKay.
Different Daniel. Just make sure.
We met at BYU, and we got married right after I graduated, and then Daniel still had 2 years left. So he finished undergrad, and then we went to UT Houston for medical school. His first year we had our daughter, and then his third year, the end of third year, we had our little boy. And he didn't know that he always wanted to do family medicine. He actually had some other ideas, but the more he did rotations, he kind of figured out what he liked, and that's what he chose. And so we ended up at McKay for residency, and he'll be done at the end of June. And he has a job lined up in Logan. We'll be going up there, and he will be working in Instacare up in Logan. So.
Okay. I'm Lisa Anderson. My husband is Doug Anderson. He's at ear, nose, and throat at Ogden Clinic right now. And we met at BYU and transferred up to the U. He started medical school, and I was still finishing my undergraduate. So I'm younger than he was and not as far along. So the first 2 years of medical school, I was going to undergraduate and he was going to medical school. And then when he graduated, I have a degree in business finance, so I worked in banking and supported him till he finished. And Justin was born third year of medical school. And so, and then we went to Indiana for residency for otolaryngology. And then after that, he set up his own practice in ear, nose, and throat for until like just 2 summers ago. He was at his own practice, and then he joined Ogden Clinic because I think he just felt better for the future. And we have 5 children.
I forgot to mention one of my kids.
We had a kid.
Start with questions. Anyone have any?
So what was the hardest thing for you guys that you wish your spouse would have known as you were going through, as he was going through medical school residency and things like that?
I started out going to a spouse orientation, and I came home so depressed that I really felt like I didn't ever want to be part of that group, because the whole time they talked about all the nurses that would go after the doctors, and that when we all ended up in divorce, that we could go to the University of Utah Medical School and they would help us with counseling. And I thought, oh my gosh. So I really decided that I was going to be more positive and optimistic than that. And I decided that as a spouse, that even though he was gone a lot, and I knew that would be the case, and I probably was the generation where I was saying to them, he worked about 100 hours a week and he had 1 day off a month through residency, so we did not see him all the time. And he did a 36-hour shift like every 3 days. And so it was kind of intense, but I always celebrated whenever he was home, and I never complained to anyone around that, oh, he's always gone, or he just never chooses that, because that was not his choice to be gone. Even though that's the profession, the hours can be long. I don't think he would choose the long hours, even though he chose that profession. To always be really positive to that. And even though our lives had to be parallel at times, to try to keep a balance, and that I would choose to be the balance of that. And I think as spouses sometimes, maybe some look down upon that and say, well, that's not really fair, that maybe you have to give up something, or you have to be without, but I really did choose to be the balance, and to celebrate with our children, or to celebrate with him each time we could be together and not be sad or complaining all the times he was leaving. So I would probably share that with you, that I hope none of you have that experience I had, that being a spouse would be told to you that it's going to be the worst thing of your life, and that it really can be a really positive thing. And I grew so much, and I was just asking them if I thought that a medical student would look for an independent spouse, or if you grow into that role, and that you are capable and you can do amazing things while while your spouse is doing amazing things.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Just, I mean, yeah, it's a long road, it's a hard road, but you've got to be doing something, and sometimes you have to be doing your own thing on your own, but you can do it. I don't know. And we definitely didn't have the same experience as Lisa. The work hours
The work hours are better.
are not like that anymore. And at least for family practice, and I'm sure it's not as bad in, you know, other residencies, other programs, but we don't have to do that anymore.
So what are the hours?
It's usually about 70 hours a week, sometimes a little bit less.
Is there kind of a rule a little bit about if they've been there a certain amount of time, then they really do need to go home?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
It
long.
used to be that they would be on call for 36 hours, now it's, I think, a 16-hour rule. So that's the longest they can be on call.
And 80 hours a week. That happens.
Yeah, it's like 70 to 80 hours, but that's in their, for our program at least, that's on their, you know, their hardest on service months, and some other months, some other, you know, rotations that they're doing aren't that hard.
To go back to your question real quickly about what we saw that was hard for our spouse, or my husband who is the student, whether it was studying for the MCAT, worrying about getting accepted to medical school, or then finally having to take his first test during medical school, I saw him worrying a lot because it can be really competitive during medical school. So as a spouse, you really have to be very conscious of being supportive and not nag, because they get a lot of negative feedback already. So you have to try your hardest to be positive, because otherwise it just tears them down. And I think that's where we also had somebody else say, well, I hope you don't get divorced during medical school. But if you're, and it was another doctor who had that kind of experience, but if you're positive and you work on having a strong marriage and a strong family, you don't have to worry about divorce. It doesn't destroy every marriage. It can make it even stronger.
So something that my husband noticed is, you know, he used to say, so in high school, you know, I was a good student. I was at like the top, 10% of the high school. I was rocking. And then I got to college, and then I was like maybe the top 20%. You know, I was still doing pretty good. But then I got to med school, and in med school, I was like dead center. You know, he was not the top student anymore. And not that was hard on him, but it was definitely an adjustment. You know, he was competing against really smart people, and that was just something new and something he had to accept, I guess. And if you're going to be competing against other doctors, you're all smart and they're all smart, and I don't know.
But if you have a spouse or kids, you have added responsibilities on you, and you're competing against people who are single that medical school is their life, and then partying or whatever that they do on the side is their release, rather than going home to their family.
I
Yes.
don't think I heard where your husband is as far as in the scheme of things. Is he a resident right now?
So he's a resident right now,
At McKay?
second year at McKay,
Second year, right.
and we have first year and third year
Okay.
residents.
And it's a 3-year residency.
3-year program.
So all three are pretty similar as far as hours and workload and stuff like that.
The schedules are a little different. What do you think, Katie?
Yeah,
How's it been?
third year, their hours are much better. They're not on service as much, so they're not on call and doing night float. It's more like clinic hours. So third year's better. Brittany's husband probably works the most.
Probably has.
So
He's also the slowest at things because he's learning, so he's probably not as efficient as their husbands are.
it's probably safe to say that like first year is the hardest, second year is a little bit better, and then from what I hear, third year is quite a bit better.
Yeah, and I think that goes for whatever specialty you
Yeah.
choose. The first year of residency is first year is the hardest.
For us, residency, every month was different. He started out in pediatrics, so it was a pediatric ER, then it was a pediatric clinic, and then pediatric cardiology. Every month was a kind of a new change, a new thing. That could bring new doctors that you worked under that could be hard, or it could be some months were busier and some were a little bit lighter. Is that the case for you?
And my husband was a surgery residency, and so it was, and we were back in the day when it was on call, and you'd stay at the hospital, and it was like every other night, or you just wouldn't come home, like you say. But I don't know if it got a lot better. Through residency, he was just gone a lot. So you do have to just learn to be independent and be supportive when he is home, because you can't complain. I mean, like you said, there's nothing you can do about it, and so you just have to just be happy about it.
So I have a question for the ones who are done. When he finally came back and it started, like, you saw him in that regular, how did that affect you and being independent and in your family? Like, how did you guys handle that?
Yeah, I want to hear this too, because I'm worried about it.
Because my husband was gone for a little over like a month and a half, and he came back and I hated him at first. So I
It
want
was
to
probably harder on him because he was home more. And it was a little frustrating because I kind of had run the show, and I changed the oil, I did the bills, I did the shopping, I bought the tires for the car. And then it kind of switched where he could be in charge of that. And it was a little frustrating. And I think that was a little bit hard through the whole route, that we were through so much together, that I really wanted him to feel like he's in charge and be in charge, but he didn't know. And I wanted him to have that. And when we started, someone said to us, it's really hard to be married to a doctor because they just boss people around all day and they want it fixed. And I would notice that. They'd come home and he'd be like, maybe he's like, scalpel, suction. And then he's like, spatula, diaper. I have been with these children all day. Come on, you're here to be my relief, not my telling me what to do. And in knowing that, I could do just what they've said about being the buffer when there's tests or stuff like that. But I would probably gear up. I don't know if it's the same for Lisa, but gear up for both of you to know that life will become different and changing. You'll have free time and you'll have choices. And he didn't know really how to make a choice to be with the family at first. I kind of dragged him along to do that because in his free time it was catching up for sleep or studying or some of that. Did I answer your question? And I think that sounds kind of negative, but I think isn't that also what people say about retirement is, oh my gosh, then you're around each other and you have to learn how to be around each other. The next thing to learn. So.
And my husband was starting a practice, and honestly, he was still really busy. So, and they have on-call times where they still get called in the middle of the night, and you just have to accept that, you know, you could be out to dinner and he gets called in and he has to go, but that's just part of life. So, you know, you're used to that. And he could call and say, I'll be home in 10 minutes, and then it's like 2 hours later and he comes home. So,
Yeah, really, he joked that in our house, 2 hours is late. 10 minutes is not late.
no.
I don't think he's dead until 3 hours.
Then you start at times
Because
when
they're
starting out,
called
you
and
think,
said we're on our way. And
you think, okay, where is he? But then after 15, 20 years, you think, okay, he'll be home eventually. You stop worrying about when he'll come home. So, but you don't hold dinner.
No, don't. That's my advice. Don't ever schedule dinner. Don't ever think, well, he's supposed to be home at 5:30. So if I have dinner laid out and ready to go at 5:30, we should be golden. Don't ever do that.
If he gets off at 6, he'll be home at 6:30. No, you can't.
You can't plan on that.
And I felt like doctors eat really fast. I think because they seize the moment. And sometimes in a comical way, I'm just trying to keep up. I wrote a romantic date and forget 10
Really fast. So I guess I have a question. I'm at the point where we have to choose which medical school to go to. And so I'm just curious, the choices you made to where to go to medical school, which residency to apply for, I guess, and then, what specialty do you want to go into too? How did you guys make that decision together, if you did together, I guess? And then when you guys did make the decision, what was the most important thing to you? Like, was it the lifestyle? Was it, the income? Or was it what he loved to do most? I guess this would be my question for all of you guys. Yeah, we can go there too, yeah.
I think that a lot of times it's where you get accepted, but Jack luckily had gotten accepted at the U. And residency, again, I think it's first choice is what type of residency you want to go into and then where you match. But for Doug, I mean, to me, it's not like you say money or lifestyle, it's what they want to do. They put all this time and investment into it and they want to be happy. You don't want them to finish 30 years later and say, oh, I'm switching. You want to enjoy what you're doing. So basically, you take a back seat and let them tell you what they're interested in and virgin in that. And then again, it's kind of where you match for residency. So if you're at the top and do have a choice, then you can kind of decide if you want to be closer to your family or something, but a lot of times it's where you match.
My husband grew up in Texas, and the medical schools down there, the tuition is pretty good compared to other places in the country. So that wasn't very hard for us to decide on medical school. He applied down there. They do an early match, so we found out in November, I think. So that wasn't very hard. And then for residency, just going through the rotations, he really found that he liked family medicine, and so there wasn't really a question between specialties. He knew family medicine was what he wanted to do. And then going on in the interviews is really what helped him decide how he wanted to rank and where he wanted to go. Just going to the, seeing the hospital and the doctors and the staff. That's really what helped him make his decision. He really liked McKinney, so.
During the process of applying to medical school, I had my heart set on going to the U because I think I was scared to death to move far away. So my family was in Idaho at the time. Now they're in Utah. But what it came down to is we got accepted to Ohio State and something in Virginia. I won't remember what school it was. So it kind of came down to a little bit of the cost of tuition. At Ohio State, if the spouse worked 1 year full-time, then you can have in-state tuition for the following 3 years. And so now my recommendation to everybody is if you can move far away from your family for medical school, do it. It doesn't work for everybody, but I'm so glad that we did because that's where I learned to become independent. Because when your husband is working and studying so hard, you have to be independent. It's a lot easier if you're kind of forced into it because I needed that push to be forced to become independent. And then my husband originally wanted to do anesthesia, and then it switched to radiology. And finally he decided family medicine because he kind of just liked everything and he preferred to be in the clinic and not so much working in the hospital. And then when we matched for residency, it came down more to motivation going back to the
So for us, Daniel got in at the U off the wait list, and the U is really slow at letting you know if you're in or if you're out of their wait list. So he had already paid to apply, for the next year. He applied to 12 schools at first, and he interviewed, at a handful, and then he only got accepted into one. So it wasn't really a choice for us. We just went where we got in. And it was great. I liked being close to family. That's really where we wanted to go, probably mostly for in-state tuition. That was a big deciding factor. And then for residency, I'll back up to med school. So back in med school, he's going through all his rotations, and he kind of always wanted to do family practice, but he really enjoyed some of his other rotations, and I think it was really good for him, to kind of keep an open mind and see what else was out there and think about the lifestyle that, that particular specialty would offer. In the end, he ended up choosing family practice, and I always tell him, are you happy with the choice that you made? Are you glad you're on this road? Because I don't want to go back. I hope you're going to be happy with what you're doing. And the further he gets down this road, the happier he is with his choice, and he knows he's in the right profession for him. And that's the most important thing is, picking the right one, picking the one you're going to be happy with. So my advice is, keep an open mind in your rotations and pick the one that you are going to be happiest doing the work and the lifestyle, not the paycheck, not the prestige, not the, whatever. The one that you can do for, X amount of years. For residency, he looked into a lot of other programs, and it was definitely the interviewing that helped make up his mind for what he wanted to do. When you look around the interview table at the other residents and they're tired or grouchy or not talking to each other, that's not a very good sign of places to go. And you'll see places like that, absolutely. So it was a really easy decision for him to make, to pick McKinney, because everyone was upbeat and happy and liked what they were doing and liked who they were working with. And since they spend so much time at work, the people that they work with it's huge. If the personalities clash, that's who they spend most of their time with. So that's important, the people that they work with.
More time than their spouse.
Yeah, they
The
will
other
spend
residents.
more time at work with the other residents and with their faculty members than they will at home, so they better get along with those people.
Well, I was just gonna mention, so for medical school interviews, they don't invite spouses, but for residency interviews, a lot of them will say bring your spouse
Yeah.
along. Go to
Go.
as many as you can.
Even if you just
Or
sit
at least
quietly in the
one.
room.
Because then you have a reference and you can talk to them when you get home to the other ones and say, well, how did it compare? And
There was a time when I didn't know how things would work out. And because my husband was assaulted and didn't have any teeth when he interviewed for medical school. And so it was bad because we didn't get in. We were on waiting lists on everything. And so there was a time when we didn't know what the future brought. But as I look back on it, I really feel like, well, maybe we are religious people. And so we were praying to know where to go. But it really just fell into place where we're supposed to do. Because we're just trying to be in tune with what we really want and what do we really need. And so when my husband then decided, when he didn't match in one area, to choose peds, it felt a really good thing for him because it funneled open instead of funneling narrower, and he could still make choices after he was in that. And then he did choose to do neonatology. And then when we decided to do like the fellowship, he really liked the research, and the hospital we were at was a very, it was the highest grade of NICU that they had. And so he liked that, to getting anything and everything he could. He chose that residency because they worked him harder and they had more stuff there. And he knew going into it, it'd be really hard, it'd be really strain our family, but he also wanted to get the most out of it. And then in fellowship, really wanted to do research and do all that stuff. So that kind of had to play in it. But then when I had time to come to choose a real life job and to be still the rest of our life, it was hard because he kind of wanted to give something back to me to say, I'm sorry you've been away from family so long. So we chose kind of by family. And I think the pay was probably half here as what it was other places. And so is that important? And some stayed and they said, oh, we could not afford to leave Kansas City. It's so good there. And he also kind of came to a place that would not use all the knowledge he did in residency, but he chose the personalities. And he really liked, like you said, the people he worked with. And the day that he came, he flew in on a Friday and left on a Saturday. He was only around them for a short amount of time. And actually Leslie's mom is one of my husband's partners, and he really, really liked, everyone that was in that group, and it helped him decide that he did want to be part of that group, and a pay cut was okay with him, and to be around family. And since then, he's kind of gotten his niche and doing more research and bringing things up a little bit more than even what the NICU had been, and Carolyn does so much, but I think he wanted it to become something that he had also. And so I think he didn't even just take the job saying, this is what it's going to be, but what can I bring into it and what can I make it into? And it really makes him happy to do that. And he's part of a European society, and he goes to Europe once a month and once a year and presents his research. And he also does a humanitarian trip once a year. He's on one right now. And for him, he's there to teach them what to do when a baby's born and they can't breathe. And he's in this really small little, right now he's in Mexico City, just showing them that blue bowl that we all take for granted about. Stick it in their nose, get the mucus out, put them in a dry newspaper after you deliver them, or rub their arms. So I think there's still lots of great things that you can do as a doctor. And I love that he gets to do those things as a spouse, even once you find your job. I'd say, to sum it up, he did settle a little bit, but he's also found some other ways to do some exciting things, even if he did settle a little bit for me to be close to family. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, fantastic.
I just kind of a general question. Like, how did you make it through financially? And with kids and stuff?
I'll start. So I worked as a school teacher, which isn't a lot, but it was more than we were used to in undergrad for the first year of medical school. And then when our son was born, I stopped working. So we were just living off medical school loans. And I guess I don't mind sharing with you, at the end of medical school, with interest, we're a little over $200,000 in debt.
That's where we're at too.
It seems really, really scary, and for some people it's more, for some people it's a lot less. It depends on what school you go to and the cost of tuition. So just, I recommend getting a financial planner. and really learn how to not spend money. During medical school, when you're getting loans, you kind of feel rich. At least for us, for the first time in our life, suddenly we had money, even if it wasn't really our money. And then finally you start earning a little bit during residency. One of the things I remember most that our financial planner told us is no matter which specialty you choose and how much debt you're in when you start, you're still way better off than the majority of people out there.
So we did the same thing, we just went off of loans. You know, I worked for a couple years, but I wasn't making that much money. I was just an aide in the elementary school, and then I stayed home. So we have, you know, over $200,000 in debt right now. And when we were in med school, you know, you get the loan all at once. So all of a sudden your bank account has tons of money. But it's not a normal bank account, you know, that keeps going up. It goes down, down, down. So you have to, you know, you really have to budget, like, to make that money last the whole time it's supposed to last for. And, you know, sometimes it was hard and sometimes it was fine, but, you know, you have to keep, you know, modest wants, modest needs, and you have to just maintain this, you know, kind of lower level all through med school, all through residency, and even after you start your job, because you're still in tons of debt. So don't start living like a doctor until, I don't know, when.
Way after.
Like, when do you start living like way after?
Retire.
Yeah, when you retire, maybe that's why.
Start a practice, so he needed to financially start all that when he got it.
Yes, and so Doug, because he wanted to open practice, he kind of had to look where there was an opening. And in Ogden, there was a doctor that an ear, nose, and throat had left by Ogden Regional, and they wanted to have a doctor by him. So the hospital helped him start a practice, but he wasn't employed by the hospital. They just helped him get started. They guaranteed the first year income until he could start paying them back. So it was kind of a loan through the hospital to buy, because it is, like you say, you have a lot of debt after medical school, and then residency, they are getting paid a little, but it's not a lot, or whatever. But it's hard because then you have to go into more debt if you're opening your own practice. So I think, seems like the way of the future is that they're doing clinics or, you know, being employed by a hospital or somewhere.
In medical school, we made $8,000 a year. We had 2 kids, and I think now, how did
In
my
medical
parents
school?
not freak
Residency.
out in medical school?
They got
Because
paid
you were
in-
working.
Oh, you were
Because
working.
I was working, but I only made about $600 a month, and that's like poverty. But we decided we would never put off life, that we would live just as if we had a bank job or any other job, that we would not put off living. If we wanted kids, we'd have kids. We actually went to Europe our second year of medical school, and we took top ramen noodles. Our suitcase had as much food as it did clothes, but that's what we wanted to do for 3 weeks before the 3rd year of medical school. We went to Europe and had a great time. So we went the route of trying not to have any debts when we finished. And so we did need to borrow, and we had a little bit of debt our 3rd and 4th year. But then in our residency, it was $28,000 a year when we started. And so then we just lived on that. And so we were able to kind of, I think debt is different now than what it was before. Because at the time, after the fact, they said to us, if you actually would have borrowed some, you could have deferred your loans. And I don't know if you can defer now. We could not ever defer.
You can.
Because we hadn't really borrowed. And we hadn't borrowed enough to really show that we were poor. So, but I think we were just creative and decided that we could save money, and well, we could earn money by saving money. So I don't know what route everyone goes, but we did not have new couches or new shoes or any of those things.
That brings up a point that I want to make though, is you need to be educated about finances. Like,
Yes,
you
we
need
wish
to
we would have been
learn
educated.
about your student loans, learn about the interest rates, learn about what that means for you. Like, you need to learn how to educate yourself about
That's such a good way,
financial
because we just
things.
went in, let's not borrow any money, but we should have educated ourselves to know what things are out there. But when we did get to residency, there was, Bank of America has a loan where it was, you could get a house, they did not require a down payment or PMI, insurance. And so we got into a house the minute we got there. And so it was great to just have someone tell us that that was an offering for residents and doctors. So I wish,
They require
yes, and I think, oh, is that out there or not anymore? And how do people know about those grades that offers things?
Yeah, if your medical school offers different financial seminars, go to everything you can. Especially fourth year, when it suddenly hits home, they're like, we're graduating and we're in a lot of debt.
So what did you guys do, like, to like pass the time, like, cause you're on your own a lot, and like you had kids and stuff, but what did you guys do, like, obviously you guys are pretty healthy, so what did you guys do?
During medical school,
Yeah.
we actually lived in like a townhome community where almost everybody else there was either medical or dental or law students. So we got together. Medical school was like the time of my life. It was so fun because I was spending so much time with friends and their kids, and you know, we'd take the baby monitor to the house next door, watch movies, and have parties all the time, and yeah, it's really fun. They work hard during medical school, but you have a lot more time off than residency. So I'm sure you guys look back at medical school and like, oh, we're only a year, not even a year out, and I really miss it. It was really fun. Probably more so for me than my husband because I wasn't studying, but
I know that's not everyone's.
no, it's not. You can make it whatever you want it to be.
Right.
Our first year of medical school, I kind of had a little bit of a negative attitude because I had a job I didn't like and I was far from home, and it wasn't quite as fun the first year. So
We went on walks, we went to the zoo, you just have to, you have to figure out your daily routine, what's going to work for you, what's going to work for your kids if you have children, and you have to be flexible, if daddy gets home in time to do something with you, that's great, or if you have to change plans, because of his work hours or whatever. I don't know, you got to find out what works for you and what's going to work for what you want to do in your schedule, and be flexible to change if you need to change.
I agree with Brittany. I made some of the best friends in medical school because their husbands were busy too, and so we'd go and take our kids and go to the zoo, we'd have play dates all the time, and I think that your husband's really busy, and wherever he goes to medical school or to residency, he's going to have like a social group right away. He'll have coworkers and other residents or other students that he'll be spending time with. So as the spouse, you need to find a group for yourself, whether it's like a book club or a play group, or if you have a job, your coworker, something, you need to find a group of people that you can spend time with, and you need to have other people that you can do things with, because your husband won't always be around, or your spouse, like they're not going to be there for a lot of things. So you need to have people that you can rely on and say, oh, I'm having a bad day, I need to get out or something. You need to have that for yourself.
often medical schools will have some sort of spouses society or something. They'll let the medical student know about it, so ask your spouse, are you getting emails about something that a spouse can go to?
Yeah.
I love the medical school spouse group. They are still some of my best friends. We had a good time. Our husbands, I'm married to a male, but females also were there, and they would get together and study, and then we would do things once a month together. We really loved. It was such a good thing. When I went to residency, my husband was in a residency that 80% was female, and so they stopped having the spouse because the men were working, and I was about one of the only few female spouses, and I really missed that. And so then I kind of turned to friends, and neighbor friends. It was a little tricky though on holidays, because my husband, they kind of would go through rotation, and he would know about 6 months ahead if he had Thanksgiving or Halloween or Christmas off, and they would rotate in, and being the lower on the totem pole, he didn't get Christmas off the first year, and the next year he got Christmas Eve, and the next year, so forth. It was a little tricky with friends because they had their husbands home when my husband wasn't home. So I'd just be really creative, like to go for walks, and I needed to find an outlet to kind of have my sanity and to not kind of explode. And sometimes someone said once that sometimes he comes home and he feels like he's been with the Indians all day, like, let me in the fort, let me in, and you've been there with the Indians, and you're like, let me out, let me out. And it's a little tricky because you can't go out because he needs to sleep. But I just got really good at being creative. And one thing that we did when our kids were little is I would play hide and seek with them on Fridays and Saturdays. And while they would hide, I would put stuff away and I would clean the house. Oh, are they in the closet? No. Are they in the drawer? And they thought they were the most magnificent hiders because it took us hours. And they were happy. I was happy. The house was clean. So I really think, how do you get to be creative and do all those things to kind of find an outlet, but to really always say, we're happy we're in this together, and we celebrated every time there was a test, and how'd you do, and Daddy's got a test tomorrow, let's all, let's be quiet, or let's do this to help him, or let's ask him. We did it as a whole family. Anything and everything was a huge family event of, like, let's study these words, or let's go here, or do that, or we would go have food at the hospital. I don't know for you guys, but residents sometimes got some money. They got little paper money. And he would kind of save his up, or we would go to the hospital and have a milkshake or something all together. And good stuff, good times. I have such fond memories of all of it. I would never say it is hard, but I'd never say any of it is really sad or just so horrible. And here you're at the beginning looking at the long haul, and it is really enjoyable, and you can make it happen.
And I think knowing what's ahead too helps you. And the fact that you're here and you're thinking about the future shows that you're going to be okay. You're preparing yourself. You know, this is the long haul. We're in it for the long haul, but we can do it, and we can do it together. And just having that mindset from the beginning really makes a difference.
Guidance.
Go ahead.
You want to go first?
Me?
Go ahead.
Okay. I just had a question about your kids. You guys all had kids during and sometimes before. How were you able to keep their spirits up too? Because their dad is gone.
Well, honestly, when they're really young, they won't know that Daddy's never home. You'll notice. And when they get a little older, they kind of start to notice. But I wouldn't say that they're sad when he's gone all the time. They're just mostly super happy when he does get home. When Daddy walks through the door, that's the best part of everybody's day. I mean, my little girls scream at the top of their lungs, Daddy! And run down the stairs to go and find him. And so, for me anyway, and for my children, it wasn't too hard with them. As long as I was happy and positive and upbeat, so were they. What about you guys?
My daughter, she's 6, almost 6.5, so she started to notice because she's older, so she'll notice when he misses out things. And so I just sometimes we'll try and recreate it at home. Like, oh, well, you did that thing in preschool and I was there. Why don't you do it for Dad now? Sing the song right now. And so just try and make it happy and positive the times when he is around.
And that was some advice that I got from an OB. In the olden days, they were gone a lot. I think it's a little bit better now, but she said as a spouse, she just always tried to say, oh, Daddy's home, instead of saying Daddy's gone.
Yeah.
And always just made it good. And so we kind of had this little routine of when Dad came home, Daddy's home, Daddy's home. We'd all run and jump in his arms. We'd all take a turn. And it kind of even helped him to get in that mode of being happy, because there were some times where a baby died that day. And that's sad, How do you shake that off, So I think the total attitude of the spouse really makes it. And for you to have that goal is that you're going to make it good. And one thing I probably should have added before is it was sometimes hard for me to have left a really great career, which I chose to do, and I wanted to do that. It was hard to sometimes have him tell me, oh yeah, I saved this child today, and oh yeah, and I did this, and found this birth defect. What'd you do today? I snatched socks. It was hard to just be ordinary. And so I really like the spouse organizations. They provided things like, right now Lisa and I are part of it, and I just did a thing where they give tours to 2nd grade for hospitals so they're not nervous, and like we would do stuff at the homeless shelter. And I really liked those things that was kind of in the medical field, and that I was doing stuff that really felt good in my kind of way. Like, I'm not a science person, I don't know how to do that, but to kind of say, oh, but I helped at the hospital today, or I helped do this. I really love those opportunities that the spouse organization provided. So you can also feel like, hey, I'm a superhero today too, because I kind of needed that sometimes.
Back to the housing thing, and this may be a little bit different for Ohio State versus Utah here. Would you say the large majority of people just rented through school and residency, or aside from somebody that has parents that'll put 50% down on a house or something, are there ways to get a house so that you can be accruing the mortgage interest and paying something down rather than just throwing money away during those?
All of our friends were rich, and all their parents helped them, and we rented. And they kind of were ahead of us because they had equity to go the next thing. There was no way that we'd do that. We just rented. Yeah, I don't know.
I would say the majority of medical school definitely rented. Very few people bought a home for medical school, even though it's 4 years, like, yeah, just the most people definitely rented. Residency, I feel like, is kind of split.
Our residency is at least half and half.
I think it's even half?
I would say half buy and half rent.
Yeah, kind of depends.
And yeah, it's from a 2-year program, so I don't know what other residencies would be like.
I mean, we rented. So the hard thing is because, like you said, medical school residencies aren't that long, you don't know if you're going to live in that area afterwards or whatever. So that
It's kind of risk.
Yeah. So we rented.
When we found out where we were going to go to medical school, you'll look at prices of what houses are in that area, and that kind of becomes your deciding factor. In Ohio, we rented, but we had friends that did buy a house, and they did have some trouble selling it, but they probably have more money at the end of it than we did. So.
It seems like there's sometimes you can hear about if you can live kind of where others live, other students, medical students. It seems like there's sometimes that Creighton seems to have this, like, it seems like they kind of know where everyone's going, and a lot of them stay together, and it's kind of a nice little neighborhood where you can kind of be with other spouses or other medical students. But I don't know how you find out about those things. Like when you interview, do you find out?
Well, where we lived was called Mini Provo, where we went to Ohio State, and sometimes med schools will have a list of current students that you can call and ask them where the different people live. So I would, if that's not available to you, I would do that. It is fun to live next to, even if you're a different face, to live next to people that are also going to medical school with you.
So along with that, one of the places that we're looking at is Miami. So when we get there, I'll be due with my third that month. So, but there's one married student there right now in all 4 years, and we've already heard of 2 coming from Utah with us. So there'll be 3 married students our first year, which would be unheard of for them.
Yeah, you guys should all live next to each other and be neighbors and best friends forever.
So most of the students though live right next to the medical school, which they say is really unsafe, not great for kids, not really a great area for families. It's like downtown Miami. So there is places further out, but you've been talking a lot about money and finances, so we're trying to decide because further out in Miami is quite a bit more expensive. So I know this is a personal question, obviously there's no right or wrong, but would you say that living further out with 3 kids would maybe be a better choice or a worse choice, or?
Are you going to be home with the children?
Yeah.
I would say you're going to be spending a lot of time. You pick where you're going to feel comfortable living.
I think you might need your network too, so
Yeah.
that's tricky, or if you'd like to be closer, so you don't have to be away from him as much. And when we would drive to downtown Kansas City, I mean, it is scary. And people were appalled that I made my trip there all the time. But I just was aware of the situation, and it was something, I mean, it's so personal.
Yeah.
You need to choose what you want to do, but you might want your network close to where everyone else is.
So for medical school, we lived right, they had married student housing, and if that's an option, we felt really safe, but of course this is Utah, but for Indiana, for residency, again, the same thing, kind of the downtown, the inner city was not that safe, so we chose a suburb where we felt safer because we had younger kids and stuff.
Yeah, in Columbus, we lived on the safe side of town, and I worked on the scary side of town, and I would not have wanted to live there.
We lived right in Houston, like UT Houston is in Houston in the medical center, and we lived like a mile away. And a lot of the other medical students, they lived in the area too, and it was just easier, we were closer, and a lot of the communities were gated and had security guards, like when you would drive in to the entrance, and I just learned to be safe with my kids. I had 2 kids in medical school, and I didn't ever go out walking on the street, even during the day, like I just stayed within the gated area. Or we had a membership to the zoo, and it was a mile away, so I would drive to the zoo, and then we could go run around and play at the zoo where I felt safe. So it is, you know, you learn ways around it. If you choose to live close, I think you'll learn what works for you.
Do you worry about the medical part about here you're making a change and you'll be having a baby and an OB and all that stuff, or are they helpful to you?
I'm not too concerned about that. And we're used to being, I work and he works and he's in school and we're used to them not seeing each other. But I wonder because there's not the married community. In Utah it's really easy to find the married with kids community, but there where there's like no one married, if that is huge or
maybe you could look at, if you're religious, you could look at, your church there. And I think a lot of times that's a great way to find like other families and people that would be kind of in a similar situation.
You will be a lot happier if you're around people that you can be friends with. If you're too isolated, it can be really hard.
Sometimes I thought it was hard to explain to someone why my spouse wasn't around. He wasn't a deadbeat. He just was busy. And it was really hard to explain that to people that didn't get it. And I loved my medical friends because they got it. They got that he wasn't a deadbeat. And sometimes when I'd show up to church, they really thought I was a single mom. They didn't have no clue that I was married. So I needed someone to know he was this great person, even though they didn't ever see him. So I think that's why I'm saying, oh, the network would be great to have. So.
What did you all do for medical insurance? What options are available to you?
We were on WIC, and it was really embarrassing, I thought, and we didn't have any. We had catastrophic insurance when we had the first 2 kids, and I thought it was really embarrassing to know that there'd be someday we'd offer back to the community and society. But at that time, they looked down at me like I was kind of done, and it was really hard. And then after that, we just got the insurance that was through residency. They offered something like that through residency and fellowship. And now something we do is a medical savings account because he can kind of take care of our needs sometimes. Like he can check ears and he can do physicals. And our oldest is 20, so we've kind of gone through our kids kind of grown up a little bit. Where I didn't like we had to be at the dog park. And I really like that. I'm not anyone that knows anything about insurance. We really like to have a little bit higher deductible and to have this money that goes into a savings account and it can roll over continually and it's not taxed. And so it just keeps adding and adding and adding and adding. And we can do it for some other things because we think we're kind of a healthy family and because our husband can kind of see some of those things. I don't know if I need to go always pay a copay. Does that make sense? Yeah.
We changed insurance a couple times. At first, I was on my works insurance, but after I quit my job, we both went on to Ohio State student insurance. And I don't think it was the cheapest, but the cost of that just kind of got thrown into the rest of the debt. But it was good insurance for us, and we were able to go to clinics that were the student dental clinics that were cost nothing. So you just kind of look into the prices, and it worked for us.
I think Daniel started out on this student insurance, and I had something separate. Then when we had kids, they were on Medicaid, which is kind of embarrassing.
Our kids were on Medicaid too.
I think that's kind of the norm that you don't have many other options that at least your child's insured.
Right. And I feel like our husbands are giving back to the community later, so I didn't have any personal issues with that. I know some people do, and they choose to go other routes, which is fine. But then after a couple of years, we just bought a personal policy through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and we felt like it was important to have insurance, but we could kind of pick and choose, and it was cheaper than the medical school insurance, so that's what we did. We didn't have dental insurance, and one night Daniel's tooth broke, so that was kind of interesting, but
we even were on food stamps for a time because I wasn't working. And I'm again one of those that feels like if you can have government assistance for that short period of your life, I think it's worth it. It helps you, but you do kind of get looked down upon sometimes.
And it was hard for me in downtown Houston going to these offices. Sometimes they were in scary neighborhoods and I was like the white girl, but you do what you gotta do to get by.
Yeah. You do what's best for your family that's going to save you money but still give you what you need, and you can only make that decision for your own family.
Anybody else?
So I know you've given advice in different areas, kind of pertaining to each of the questions, but if you were to give a general advice to somebody that's getting ready to be the spouse of this position or position in training, what would that be?
So I can't remember if this was before or after he'd been accepted to medical school, but I remember at one night having a complete mental breakdown. This was before we had kids. We were married. We knew we were moving far away, so we knew we were going to Ohio, and I was scared to death because I felt like, well, we're going to start having kids soon. I have to go out and find a job. I felt like I had to provide for the family and have the kids, and my husband was going to be so busy that I would never see him that it really scared me. And so I guess, I don't know, from that advice, I guess I would say, it'll be okay. It is hard, but it's probably not the most difficult thing you're going to do. You're stronger than you think.
Yeah,
And if you have a mental breakdown, it's okay.
It's okay.
You do too.
We all have those. Yeah, I would say just perspective. Yes, it's a long road, but I mean, you've got to be doing something anyway. You might as well be working toward, I mean, that's why you're doing this, right? You're working toward a better future. So, I mean, keep that in mind. It's a long road, but the other side is longer. And from what I hear, it's totally worth it. So, yeah.
And if you're going through it together with a spouse, I think that if you make the choice to have it help you grow closer together, then it does. If you choose to rely on each other and strengthen each other through those tough times, then it can strengthen your marriage, if you choose to let it do that.
I remember it being kind of discouraging when I would see my other friends who had graduated undergrad the same time as us, buying their first house, their husband already has an established job. It looked and seemed like they had everything, and I thought, we've got all of this schooling ahead of us and all this debt to go through. Don't let it discourage you, because everyone has to take a different path in life. It's a career. That's all it is. It's still have the kind of lifestyle and happy family, even if it's hard.
I think my advice would be to not live parallel lives. And that's tricky because maybe they're really busy and so you're finding a way to cope, or maybe you're finding an interest that you have, or maybe they just want to sleep. And I think it kind of starts to get where you can just be side by side and passing the night. And I think I'd go in saying, I don't want to be like that. We need to get our lives to go. And as a spouse, maybe you need to provide for the kids and the bread, and you've got to carry this weight of, carrying this all, and I'm going to have a mental breakdown. And still, is there a way to kind of be able to cope and deal with it and do the things you need to do? So I don't know if I've still mastered that, because here I'm still, now we're 10 years away from the whole experience, no doubt. How long ago was medical school? It was a long time ago. And are we still really perfect at keeping our lives really in time? There are times when we're parallel. And when I noticed that, I really worked to get us to go back together. Do you feel like you have any advice on how you would do that, or what you would do to make them so they're not parallel? Because here you're going through this adventure and you kind of are saying, this is what we're both going to do. What would you do?
One thing I'm going to throw out there is technology is awesome, because through medical school, and even now in residency, I text my husband a lot. And I feel like that keeps us connected during the day, so we're not just parallel. Even if it's just little stuff, I'll send him pictures of the kids, or just, hey, how's your day going today? and maybe he doesn't get back to me for 3 hours, but he'll respond. And it's like we're having that conversation throughout the day so we can stay connected.
And saying, I want you to be part of this. And
Yeah.
this is important to me, but I like that.
If you find yourself treating each other like roommates and not spouses, then I think that's what in my mind, like, you know, when we talk about having parallel lives. If I find that we're more like roommates instead of husband and wife, then I know that we need to reevaluate.
On those lines then, I mean, I think like having one-on-one time is important even when you have kids. So I'm just asking, especially because you don't have a ton of money, how did you incorporate like date night? I mean, you can't really plan it all the time. So how did you do it, and what did you guys do? Because you obviously can't go
Early bedtime. Get your kids to bed like at a decent time. That's all I can say.
When they're young and you can, like, go to bed at 7:30, so you have a couple hours alone.
We haven't mastered date night during residency. It's kind of a whole other beast. But during medical school, really explore the area that you live in. Don't go to chain restaurants. Go to the places that are only in that area and figure out what, the upperclassmen will tell you, go to these museums and these places. But a lot of places you can get discounts because you are a student and you can use your student ID to get into a lot of places for discounts.
Yeah, in some ways med school is, kind of a continuation of undergrad. You're still a student, you still kind of have that, that kind of fun student mentality a little bit. Yeah, it's harder, but I don't know, for me at least, for us in our experience, it wasn't that different from undergrad. It was more work, it was more responsibility, it was a little bit harder, but it wasn't that different.
It's easier, on my husband, it was a little bit easier going to medical school time-wise because in undergrad he was working part-time and going to school. And when you go to medical school, for the most part, the students are just going to school. And it's more school hours, but you can focus more and you almost have fewer responsibilities or less on your plate, I guess. Just more time for medical school.
Yeah.
Going back to the date night question, we're not great about doing one-on-one. We're just like, we want to go do this, let's pack everything up and go. So we just take our kids with us.
Or I would say also, like she was saying, some of the funnest times is that you do make really great friends. And so, like, we would play Rook while we were in medical school. We'd get together at somebody's house, and they have little kids, and we have little kids, and we'd play games. Or, so we weren't spending a lot of money, but we were getting together. You kind of need that support system. You need talk to other people that are going through the same things you are. It makes you feel like, oh, it's not so bad. I can handle this. So.
And find people you can swap babysitting with, so you never have to pay for a babysitter.
During medical school, do they have stuff very often that's like this, where you'll go with your spouse to hear somebody present on research or talk about something that has to do with their career? You know what I mean?
I'm sure it depends on the school. Our school had that every once in a while. Sometimes we went, sometimes we didn't go. I'm sure every school is different. I bet they do.
Ohio State had a lot of that, mostly towards the end, like during fourth year though. But they would have, I forget what they call it, they have medical school prom. I don't remember, they had like an official name for it. But they have events where you can invite your spouse.
That's where we went. We did have some of that, and I loved going. A lot of it was over my head, but I really liked going and listening and just being stimulated. And I don't know how it works now, but sometimes the drug reps would kind of help pay for something, a dinner or something, and have something catered. And we always seized the moment.
Before we had kids, I would even go to some of my husband's lectures with him, like the really big class ones where no one would notice that I wasn't supposed to be there, and it was all over my head. But it's fun to like have a perspective of this is the kind of stuff that they're learning that looks like a foreign language, but it kind of helps you realize, okay, they really do need to focus because this is like hard stuff.
I'm thinking back on the date question. We were horrible. We'd go on a date once a year. That's bad, and it took its toll. But I think we were trying to save money and just try to always be with the kids. But I realize now that we kind of got in the routine that we would just try to go together whenever he had a time off. So if he went to Home Depot, I went with him, or I'd go to the grocery store, and we just always tried to go together on those days off. And so I think, well, no, that's lame. We went to Home Depot for our date, but probably that thought about, and even like when you say about when the different life changes come and the different schedules, to really like to be together and kind of have that thing of, well, we just go and do things together. And we kind of made a rule that we would not separate ourselves. That I didn't, it's hard because I needed to go back and see family and he didn't get vacation, so sometimes I'd go, but sometimes I just didn't try to get away from it, you know, go with the girlfriends or something. That was just our thing. But I think it was just really important for us to have together time a lot and to try to be together. And we still do that, even if sometimes he'll have a Tuesday off. Usually he has meetings on Tuesdays. So like at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, we've got a little time and we'll just go to the store or something. Just like to be together and still try to keep up.
If you have young children, moms, learn how to fly by yourself with kids, because you'll fly by yourself a lot if you're far away, you want to go visit them.
And some of the cheapest flights are really bad times for kids. We've answered all their questions.
How would you do that then if you're flying with kids?
By yourself.
Yeah. How do you?
Well, the first time I flew by myself, my son was 4 months old, and then every 3 or 4 months we would do it again. Don't worry about what other people think. If your baby's crying, then cry. You'll never see those people again. Just survival mode.
I traveled with 3, and I would wear overalls so they each had to hang on to one thing on the side, and I had one in the front. And they cried, and you just don't worry about them. But I think our kids, they kind of knew they needed to tell Mom, it's going to make me cry. They stepped up to the plate, and they knew that. And I would take the little kids to piano recitals at great, big, huge, prestigious places in Kansas, and they knew that there wasn't a dad, and that they just had to help me out, and they had to be good. And they are amazing kids. They did amazing things. They did a lot of stuff with me, and they were very helpful to me. And there were times there was raccoons in the rafters. Dad's not going to be home. We gotta figure out a way to figure this out, kids. What are we gonna do about this? And it was kind of fun to see the kids kind of step up to that. And I don't know, did you find that when traveling? That they kind of know we gotta be good.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a blowout, it's however many thousands of feet in the air, just throw the blows away. Just don't even worry about it. You know, a 4-month-old isn't really, you know.
And maybe you're heading
that,
home.
You know, my son's just barely 3 now, but sometimes it's survival mode, and that's okay.
I posted some questions, and someone online actually asked, how did medicine change your spouse, or how is it changing your spouse, for the good and for the bad? I guess would be a good way to look at it.
I don't know, like otherwise, like I don't know if I've noticed.
My husband will, just in observing people, he will often say, I think that person has this syndrome. It's just by being able to tell from physical features.
It's almost
you know,
a
it's
game,
kind of fun, yeah.
Diagnose people.
My husband, the first year of medical school, started thinking he had everything. He started studying all these things. And my husband, when he was going through surgery or whatever, rotations would start drawing on your face and looking at things and how you do. So, I mean, you deal with it. It is true, and people are going to come up to you, even as a spouse, and ask you a medical question. They would say, oh, your husband's this. Well, what would you do with this? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not a doctor, but I'll have to call you if you'd like to talk to him. You have to be very careful. Also, there's lots of HIPAA violations. So one thing is you can't feel bad if your husband cannot tell you things. Because that's what they do, and they come home and they cannot tell you because it is against the law, and there's just privacy things. So you have to be aware and not feel bad that, oh, why can't you tell me that or something, because they can't tell you. Okay. So.
And it is really fun to help your spouse study for tests. You know, if you've got a list of drugs that they need to memorize, that's kind of how you learn to spend one-on-one time with them, even while they're busy studying.
Yeah, I don't think it's really changed. My husband, I can't see any change. It's surprising to me when I hear him talking on the phone now, spitting out these names of drugs, these names of conditions, I don't even know, I have no idea what he's talking about. And I'm like, wow, like he really sounds like a doctor. He sounds so smart. I don't know, but I don't think it's changed him. It hasn't changed his personality. It hasn't, maybe it's changed his outlook on doctors and medicine and healthcare in general, but I don't think he's changed.
Yeah, I find that when I hear anybody talking bad about their doctor, I kind of cringe. because I think my husband's trained to be a doctor and they're doing their best, and so I kind
I
of
was
stick
at
up for
Raging
doctors
Waters,
overall.
and the girl in front of me, oh yeah, my doctor, my baby's premature, and they just charge us that they could go on a cruise. I'm not going on any cruise. What are you talking about? I think it's really people look down on doctors. It was hard to sometimes watch commercials. Every commercial is, hey, your doctor done this wrong, let's sue him. You know, it's kind of hard to hear people down doctors and all that stuff.
Yeah, but within medical school and residency, everybody's lifting each other up because you're all chosen the same career.
And just kind of laugh at it.
Yeah.
So your question about changing, I think my husband has gone through, there's been like kind of different phases at different times. There was a point in medical school where he was just like really discouraged and kind of questioning, you know, like, is this the path I want to take? And so that was a little bit hard for me to see him discouraged, but that was a good time where I could be the balance in our relationship and kind of try and support him in any way I could. But also, in addition to that, there's been other times where I've really seen his confidence grow, like coming into residency and really starting to use all that knowledge and learning how to practice it and just becoming really confident in the knowledge that he had and that he can do this. He can be a doctor. He can be a good doctor. And so it's been interesting to see some of the changes in him. I guess those are the changes I would say that I've seen.
You were going to say something, I just want to say something real quick. That it was hard to pick a profession because sometimes it was hard to take away the personality of the attending doctor you worked with and the profession. And it was a little hard. And so when you get to that, I think you just got to be really in tune with and deciphering, because I don't know why my husband loved surgery, but the doctor was so good, and then he really hated another one. And I thought, God, that profession feels like you. That feels like a fit. How could you hate that? It was because the doctor was so. So I don't know how do you read through that, you know? But
And
sometimes it's.
I think sometimes that really does affect it because my husband hated surgery
And
for
maybe
that
was
reason.
depressing that year because
Yeah.
But I have a friend who just matched in surgery, or will on Friday, that does not have the typical personality of a surgeon. So don't fit yourself into a certain box of what you think you would fit into.
What's your perspective on the healthcare reform and with your spouses going into medicine, or the ones that are fairly, getting to that point? Is there concern, or have they talked about how they feel with all the changes and what's coming up and the future of medicine?
They're still waiting to see how it will affect their
He's
practice.
just like,
I don't think we really know yet. And so I think it's actually, in some ways, it's good because it would be great if everyone does have insurance and are able to go see a doctor. So I think we don't know. I think, like I said, my husband decided that instead of being solo practice, he thought it would be good to be part of a group because of, and again, that's more insurance. Insurance is really steer patients to where they go, and Doug, as a surgeon, may need to have referrals from primary care doctors, and more, they're in groups and have to refer certain directions or whatever. Anyway, so that made him decide to change his practice. But I think it's still, we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
Is there anything you guys can remember about your spouses that just during some times that would help you feel uplifted? So you're saying your support and all of that, but was there anything that they did at all? They're doing so much already, but anything that they did that just would catch you off guard or would just help?
I was going through some old stuff the other day, and I found a note that Daniel left me, and it was just like a few sentences, and basically he was just saying, thanks for taking care of our kids. And it just meant a lot to me that he would even recognize, just a little note to say thank you meant a lot. I think if your spouse can just recognize the effort that you're putting in at home is as much as they're putting in at school, means a lot.
It's not just the medical student that's working hard, it's both of you.
I think that is those little things, a little note or just a little extra hand. I mean, even someone carrying the dishwasher just lifted me up so much because I was trying to carry so much. And I think even as spouses, medical spouses, to go knowing that even those little written notes are so appreciative to just have someone appreciate what you do.
This doesn't really tie in with what you were saying, but the thing that I've kind of been thinking is, you know, even if you're the one staying at home with the kids, like, you are investing in their education, their career. I mean, I don't think you can say as much as they are, but by investing in your family and, you know, investing in washing their scrubs that they wear to work, like, you're investing in, it's your future together. So even though you're the one staying at home, you're not going to med school, you're not, you know, cutting someone's body open. It's, you know, you're sacrificing, you know, investing in yourself by putting yourself through school or whatever to put them through school. So, I mean, you're accomplishing things too. You're doing it together. It's a together thing.
Can you ask them a question? What are you guys most scared about or uncertain about going into medical school?
Mine would definitely be like, are we gonna stay in Utah or are we gonna go away? 'Cause all my family's in Utah, and like we already have a 2-year-old son, and it's like, what am I gonna do all day?
And I really would echo what they've said, that we love going for the adventure. You can hate it, but you're only going to be gone 3 years. What do you have to lose? Like, it is awesome. Go and
Be prepared to
love
move
it.
away, and it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, and you become really close with your spouse, and also with, like, if you have your board or your church group or whoever your support group is, they become your family.
That uncertainty keeps coming back as you graduate and then have
Yeah,
to go to
get used to
residency.
that feeling.
And I'm sure as you in residency and have to search for a job. So
we
it's not a fun
didn't
feeling.
move away. We stayed in Utah, and now that, you know, the next stage is looking for a job, we're not really going to move away now. So, you know, we didn't have that experience of moving away from family. And not that I regret staying in Utah. I loved it. I thought it was awesome, but we didn't have that experience. So I think, you know, maybe that is something that we kind of missed out on.
I think you'll make great friends. If you go away, you will make awesome friends. And like I said, technology is wonderful. My parents live in Chicago, so we live in Utah now, but my parents are in Chicago, and Daniel's parents are still in Houston. So we do FaceTime with the grandparents a lot, and that's nice. And if you have any family members who don't work during the day, and if you're home all day with your 2-year-old, you can always call them and talk to them.
And we kind of budgeted that I would come back and visit, and we kind of always came back to Utah like Christmas time, which is scary driving, but it was priority to us, and we came in the summer. It was just something we did. Sometimes we thought we should go see, like, back east, we should go see Chicago. Nope, we came back to Salt Lake. It was good. I always just put that as part of the plan.
I would call my mom on lunch breaks or during my first year crying almost every single day. And that slowly, you know, it's like once a week and until it takes people different amounts of time to get used to
What do they
your
make you
different
cry?
situation. Well, it was
First
my
graders.
My first graders
Okay.
made me cry.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can remember driving on the freeway and I'm lost in Columbus, Ohio, and you know, those are the kind of experiences that help you become independent. And they're good for you.
Well, I was going to say, almost in response to your question, I feel like we've done a lot of this in undergrad, really, like a lot, because we've had kids in undergrad, and I've worked and he's worked, and we've juggled a lot of that. I think one of the really important things is being really self-aware, because I have lots of family around, but they all have their own kids and their own families. We're kind of like the runt of the family ends, and so like I have people to reach out to if I need them, but our little boy had RSV in the middle of a semester, and I just had him, so I was like a week after giving birth and back in the hospital, and so luckily we had family around to take our other little girl, but I think it was really hard on me, and so I worry about moments like that being far away, and yet at the same time I realize that I know more about myself, so I know that if I can't handle this, then whether we have the money or not, I'm going to need to get help or ask for help or do something, whether it's using money to fly somewhere or having someone fly to us or whatever. And I don't know what you guys would recommend on like going cheaper on that, but like I think just being that self-aware is, or if you have ideas of how to stay on top of yourself, like sometimes I think you start to feel really down about something, and 4 weeks later you're like, oh, I feel really happy. Oh, I could have felt happier then if I would have been aware of how hard his schedule was on me, or how much I was trying to load on myself, or I don't know. there's probably no special
I think my
cure.
spouse and I were trying to protect each other from worrying about the other. And I found out he hated and had a hard time first part of residency. I didn't even know. I had a great time. I kept trying a new place and find new friends. So I think that was really good to be self-aware, but also share. And I had to drive myself to the hospital twice to deliver. Just couldn't get someone to come in for him. And now it's funny. And we just went, it's just going to be a funny story. We're going to have this whole book. We're going to write a whole book about how funny this whole thing was and how comical it was. And we did have a baby in the NICU for a week. And I really wanted to be there to nurse, so I chose to stay there. And we needed to have a neighbor watch the kids. And we just really were like, we don't know you that well, but can you help us out? And we really loved that experience of getting to know someone outside of our, and we got so close to them. So I really appreciated, here's these worries you have, that the opportunity lended itself to really build a relationship we couldn't have had otherwise, because we didn't know how to break that barrier. And having them help us really was good. And we survived. And then now it's another good story.
When you get to medical school, you're going to find that there's second, third, and fourth years above you that a year ago were in that same position, trying to figure out how to adjust to that new life. So get to know those people, whether they have kids or not, whether they're in the same kind of life situation as you are. They have wisdom.
And I know some people who moved away for residency, you know, like Brittany said, your friends out in Ohio State or whatever become your best friends and they're like your family. And some people that we knew would leave their children, you know, with friends, and then they would fly home, you know, for a weekend or for something, and they would swap, you know, babysitting that way. And just know that there are other people in your exact same situation or that have been in your situation. And if you need to reach out for help, people will help you. And I think, like what you're saying, being self-aware, when you need to ask for help, you got to do it. You got to ask for help, and someone will be there to help you. Whether it's your mom, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's, you know, a classmate, somebody will be there.
I felt like good advice is when you're there, you be all there. Because I did have friends that were in medicine, and they were going back home every single month, and they never got themselves into it. And one did result in a divorce because I think she just never connected with the whole, his thing and the thing, and she was always attached back to home. Who knows what happened, but I really felt like when you're there, be all there. And when we were there, we were tourists, we saw anything and everything that was free. And I really loved just taking it as an adventure, and this is what we're going to do. And I love my family, and I love my life. But this is my life for now, and I'm going to love every minute of it.
So I'm a homebody, and everyone keeps saying find friends. I'm terrified. Because I'm like, how am I supposed to find anybody when I'm not going to go knock on my neighbor's door and say hi?
But if
So-
I'm a little bit more that way, and I love to read. And so if you just find the things that work for you, that you're satisfied with, then maybe you don't have a million friends.
You didn't like have
I've had friends, but it takes time, so it's a little longer to build those friends. And so, but for me, if I could escape by reading for a little while or something like that, then I was okay, you know.
Are you content to kind of be a little bit of a homebody?
Yeah, I love staying at home. Like, my best friend is my baby, and I'm about to have another one, and I'm, like, super excited.
Then you're going to have
But then I'm like,
friends.
sometimes I do need someone, but I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to make that extra friend.
Sometimes it's through your kids, because I did things like in residency, like we did a little joyful preschool because we weren't paying for preschool, so we did our own among some friends or whatever. Or you put your kids in a little music class, or you do, and then you meet parents that have kids a similar age. I mean, I think that's how it is a lot of times, even out of residency or whatever, you meet friends through your kids too. As they get a little older, you can do that.
She's terrifying. Make friends. Get a group. I'm like, I'm screwed.
If you hear about a book club or a craft group or some group, even if you're not interested, still go, because that's how you will meet people.
But
At least once, at least once.
But if you don't find yourself meeting friends and looking for friends, then, you know, maybe you personally don't need a huge circle of friends around you. Yeah.
No, I'm a homebody, and I was really content to do my thing. And I'm not an exercise person, so I did not exercise a lick, or did I eat a healthy thing the whole time we were in residency. I ate probably food as an LL, and I was very happy. I did have some depression when we got to residency that I kind of caught me off guard because I did not know where it came from and I didn't know why. I didn't know if it was being away from family or just trying to be on my own and be self-sufficient. So I think you could have some of that, but it's not going to ruin you.
Because I'm away from my family. I'm from California. I don't even care. I love change. I think it's fun.
And I really do, like
enjoy
they
it.
said,
I
find the
just-
thing you like and do the thing you like. Yeah, I do the thing you like to do and cherish that.
I'm safe.
You're safe. You're good.
Maybe to end, just because we want to end at 8, is it worth it? Just as like a reassurance for all the married people here. And then, what was the other thing I was going to add to it? Is it worth it? And yeah. Sorry, there was something else to work through.
Are you kidding me? Of course it's worth it. Well, I already said before, it is, my experience, it was really fun.
Oh, is it worth it? And can we do it? Because
Yes,
you guys
can. Yes, you can. Because I had a mental breakdown before and I was sure that I was going to be depressed and lonely and not meet anybody, and that wasn't the case at all.
I think so with it. Everyone around us tried to talk us out of it. And being a business person, they told us we would make so much more money getting a job. I think we were married through 15 years of school and training. That's a long haul. It is so worth it. And I think we did get closer. I've become, I think, a more capable and more talented person probably than what I would have probably allowed myself to be, and just love to be part of the field where you're helping people. That's a great thing to be.
For me, I always knew that, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and my husband was going to be the one working, and just to see him confident and happy in the career that he's chosen, it has absolutely been worth it. He loves what he does. He loves going to work every day, and so for me, seeing him happy in what he's doing, totally worth it.
I agree, it's totally worth it. My husband, medical school, just our experience, a lot of people say residency is harder, but for us, medical school was harder. And just seeing him in residency, how happy he is, how much he enjoys his job and becomes so happy, it's totally worth it. And I'm pretty sure this summer we get a real paycheck.
It is nice. But know that they don't have a lot of stress too, and you still have to be realistic even when they're out of residency, that if the career that they've chosen, they may be gone a lot, and so you do have to be independent or able to do things with your kids on your own or just on your own. And so, and be happy and not complain about the hours, because we kind of knew that to start with ourselves. But yes, I think it's worth it. And again, you want them to be happy, and so the whole reason you're going through this is for them to do the job that they wanted to do.
And I really thought that we were going to get this huge paycheck and like golden eggs were going to fall. I don't know if I've ever realized, and people say, you were so loaded. Well, you just kind of go along and you spend what you earn. So I don't know if I'd do it. It's not worth it for the paycheck.
Right.
That's not why you're doing it. And
Because
find
you
other
do have a
reasons.
lot more debt when you come out, and so yes, your paycheck goes up, but you have debt that you have to pay back. So definitely don't do it just like if you think you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, there's probably other ways to make money.
One more thing I thought of too is there's ups and downs with anything. And whether you choose business or art or being a doctor and being a medical professional, there's going to be ups and downs in life. And you can't blame it on your career, your profession, unless there's something really wrong going on. You know, there's going to be ups and downs, whatever you do in life. That's just how it's going to go.
And I think, something that I would tell myself when my husband was working all the time, and it was, hard because he was gone so much, but I mean, really, how many people out there are working 2 jobs, making half or less money than he makes, and, and that's all that they have in their future. That's all that they will ever have. That's all they will know. Just keep perspective. It's not going to be like this all the time, and if they love going to work and love what they're doing, then you made the right choice.
I have one last question. Sorry. We're at the point of the MCAT and applying and all of that stress. And I guess, what is your best advice for not being, I'm a nervous wreck more than he is, for all of that, for helping him and for not being a nervous wreck for all of that? I know that's such a small part, but
What do you think makes you most nervous? About the future or just doing wrong, the results, each test? Or...
yeah, like everything up until this point kind of has been about this. So what if?
I think
All
part
part.
of it too is, trusting him, and if he feels confident in the scores that he's been getting on practice tests or his study habits, or it is scary for you because you're investing your future, on his test score. It's a big deal. But I mean, it's true. You're gonna have to trust him, and if he feels good about it, take some faith in that if he's okay with it, you can be okay with it too. And if it doesn't work out the first time, that's okay.
Yeah,
Take
that's
it again
like-
next year.
It's not the end of the world.
It's okay.
And don't put so much pressure on you that you think if you fail, then it's the end of the world. Because it's going to be okay. And no matter what, if he does well or if he doesn't, honestly, you'll find a path and you'll figure out what you want to do with your life and just be supportive of each other.
Yeah, if you have to take the MCAT again, that's okay. If you have to apply, next year for medical school after not doing the first year, that's okay. If you have to go to a different residency, it's gonna be okay.
If you don't match and you have to scramble.
Yeah,
It's okay.
it's okay.
And so I have kind of that perspective too, because my son Justin is just going through this also all over again. And so I do think that you do have to just, like you say, even if, be supportive one way or the other. And so he gets really nervous about if he's going to match somewhere or where he's going to go. But I agree that you just need to be, you can have a backup plan. Honestly, it's not the end of the world if you don't do well. We have situations where Justin's gotten in, but I have a nephew that hasn't gotten in, and honestly, they have a really good attitude about it. And what I was going to say is, if I talk to Justin or have a mentor, which I know Weaver State has a really good mentoring program, about other things you can do, because they're not just looking at MCAT scores, they're not just looking at your grades, they're looking at what kind of research you're doing. They're looking at the service that you're doing, what kind of leadership skills you have. So there's a lot of ways that if you want to, you can boost your application in other ways.
I felt like it was very stressful at that time because the grades matter so much and you want to be this well-rounded person. And when my husband interviewed for medical school, they gave him the logic questions. 13 marbles and you have a scale and you can weigh it twice. Which pile is going to have it? So I think in a lot of ways, this is stressful and you can't avoid it, but you can make it through it. And I think being a well-rounded thing kind of helps the stress of reading a novel, so you have something else to talk about, because they might ask you questions that aren't related to the medical part. And then I thought once we got to medical school, you could kind of take a breath, because I didn't realize it, but it's a pass-fail situation at the University of Utah Medical School. So it didn't matter if it's A minus B plus, it was pass or fail. And your goal is always just to pass. And that you study with people, kind of help take the stress off a little bit, because you can kind of gauge with your peers kind of how you work. Sometimes it's hard because you have those people that said, oh, I don't ever study. And they've got these A's, and you're like, man, we are busting our buns to get this information. How can you do so well? But I think this is really a little bit of the more stressful part than some of the others. And you can make it through it, and then you can kind of just take a little.
Yeah, it's so unknown.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you get through this, when it comes time to take boards, step 1, step 2, step 3,
Yeah.
you'll be more prepared and you won't worry quite as much.
One of the things my husband and I have done, because we were just past that and accepted, so not so stressed, but is we tried to make things fun. One thing that made me less stressed is he applied really widely, so to DO schools. We put a whole map of the United States on our kitchen wall, put little sticky notes where we thought it would be fun to go and interview or whatever, so we were both looking at it, so both of us knew what was going on. And then Denver, he got an interview at, and we're like, we could drive there for the weekends. We don't even care if we get into Denver, but it's fun to drive there for the weekend, spend the weekend without kids, and enjoyed it, and talked about what we would do if we lived there, and what fun things we could have planned. And even now, we're still waiting on the U, like everyone else. But even now, we're like, well, if we're in Miami, I'm like, I can't really take 3 kids to the beach by myself, but maybe on Saturday afternoons
You can.
But Saturday afternoons, maybe we can still wait for 2 hours and hit the beach every week or something, and try and talk about all the positives and all the things we can do together, and the more we talk about it, the more we get excited. And now I'm almost like, oh, if we get into U, I'm going to be kind of sad that we don't get to go to Miami. Like, so you get excited about things, and then I think it's less stressful because you're not focused on, this is our only option, and it's got to happen. And like when we said we'd applied to DO schools and stuff, then he ended up doing better on the MCAT, and so then I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, it was a happy surprise instead of just like, oh, I didn't do as good as I hoped, you know? So just keep wide views, I guess, is what we did to try and de-stress there, but.
You can do it. You'll be great.
Okay, we'll give him a hand. We have some thank you cards for you guys before you go, and we really appreciate it. If you guys take the time, and I guess if you don't mind sticking around for 1 minute, if someone has like a quick question to ask you before you go, maybe that'd be great. But thanks everyone for coming. Hope you enjoyed the food. Thanks.
How have you been? Good. How have you been? I know. Oh my gosh, you're going down that road. How cool is that?
Questions for you?
Yes, she is.